My parents said I shouldn't have come to Thanksgiving, so I billed them. My name is Everett, and I'm 29 years old. I've always been the dependable one in my family, the one who quietly handled responsibilities without making a fuss. I work as a systems analyst for a healthcare software company. The job pays well, and I've managed to build a stable life for myself. My older sister, whom I'll call Lillian, is 32. She's the artistic soul of the family, always immersed in creative pursuits. Growing up, she was the center of attention, the one our parents doted on. Our father worked in manufacturing management for 3 decades until he was laid off 2 years ago. Our mother held part-time administrative jobs, often choosing roles that allowed her to be present for Lillian's activities. During our childhood, I was the quiet achiever. I earned good grades, stayed out of trouble, and eventually secured a full scholarship to an engineering program. After graduation, I landed a solid job and have been self-sufficient ever since. Lillian, on the other hand, had a more tumultuous path. Her successes were celebrated as monumental, while her setbacks were often attributed to external factors. 2 years ago, when our father lost his job, it was a significant blow to the family. He struggled to find comparable work, and our mother's part-time income wasn't enough to cover their expenses. One evening, our mother called me in tears, expressing fear about losing their home due to missed mortgage payments. Without hesitation, I stepped in. I paid the overdue amount, set up automatic payments for their utilities, and began sending them grocery money. It was meant to be a temporary arrangement until our father found new employment. As time passed, I noticed a shift. The gratitude faded, and my contributions became expected rather than appreciated. Conversations with our parents often highlighted how much Lillian was helping, which puzzled me. I brushed it off, assuming she was contributing in her own way. The turning point came during last year's Thanksgiving dinner. Our Uncle Raymond raised a toast to Lillian for her unwavering support during challenging times. Everyone applauded, and Lillian modestly responded, "Family supports family." Later, I overheard our cousin Meredith telling her husband that Lillian was covering all our parents' bills and that I hadn't offered any help, despite my stable income. I stood there, stunned, holding the groceries I had purchased for the dinner. That evening, I confronted Lillian in the kitchen. I asked if she had been telling people she was paying our parents' bills. She responded calmly, saying that our parents needed to believe someone cared. She claimed that being physically present was more important than financial contributions and that I was too focused on recognition. Her words left me feeling hollow, as if my efforts were invisible. I continued supporting our parents, but the resentment grew. 3 months before the next Thanksgiving, I visited their home unannounced to drop off a new router. As I approached, I overheard a conversation between our father and Lillian. They discussed how I was distant and uninvolved, while Lillian was making sacrifices to keep things afloat. I was shocked to hear our father say that at least they had one child with a heart. That night, I compiled a detailed record of my financial contributions over the past 2 years. Mortgage assistance, $4,200. Utilities, $2,400. Groceries, $1,300. Car insurance, $800. Property taxes, $1,000. Emergency funds, $500. Total, $10,200. Despite these efforts, Lillian continued to present herself as the family savior, taking credit for my financial support. She posted on social media about her sacrifices and even shared screenshots of my payments as if they were her own. It became clear that she was constructing a narrative where she was the hero, and I was the indifferent sibling. As Thanksgiving approached, I decided it was time to address the situation. I had been silent for too long, allowing misconceptions to fester. It was time to reveal the truth and reclaim my place in the family narrative. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and I spent the early morning preparing a homemade pecan pie, my mother's favorite. I dressed in the forest green sweater she always said brought out my eyes, trying to convince myself that this year would be different. That maybe, just maybe, things would feel more like family again. I drove the 4 hours to their home in Lenwood, carefully avoiding traffic jams and icy patches. Despite the weight on my shoulders, I held onto a sliver of hope that I was overthinking it all. When I arrived and knocked on the door, I expected the usual lukewarm welcome, a distracted hug from my father, a vague comment from my mother about how it's been so long. But instead, my mother cracked open the door just wide enough to see her face. "Everett, you shouldn't have come," she whispered. It didn't register at first. I waited, holding the pie in both hands, smiling politely. "What do you mean?" She looked over her shoulder before stepping out onto the porch and pulling the door almost shut behind her. "It's better if you don't come in today. Lillian said she won't stay if you're here. She's been under a lot of pressure, trying to hold everything together." I blinked, trying to process her words. "I drove 4 hours, Mom. I know, she said quickly. But she's really been struggling. With everything she's doing for us. Everything she's doing? From inside the house, I could hear laughter. Uncle Raymond's hearty chuckle echoed through the entryway, followed by the clinking of glasses. And then Lillian's voice rang out, loud and clear. I just think family should take care of each other. Some people understand that better than others. I stood there, hands full of pie and small gifts for the nieces and nephews, my mind slowly unraveling. My mother's eyes didn't meet mine. She offered a weak smile and said, maybe next weekend would be better. Lillian's just very stressed after covering the mortgage again. I stared at her, stunned. The mortgage? I asked flatly. Yes. She's been helping so much, utilities too. I pulled my phone from my pocket and, without saying a word, opened my banking app. Mom, who do you think has been paying your bills for the past 2 years? She looked genuinely puzzled. Lillian's been handling all that. She even shows us the receipts every month. Those are mine, I said, my voice quiet but steady. She asks me to send the confirmations, then presents them as her own. My mother stood frozen. I hit a button in the app and confirmed the shutdown of all utility accounts, gas, water, internet, all in my name. What did you do? She asked, her voice climbing. From inside, I heard Lillian shout, the internet just cut out. Why are the lights flickering? I turned without another word and walked back to my car. As I reversed down the driveway, Lillian came bursting out the front door, her expression frantic. Everett! What are you doing? I rolled down the window and looked her in the eye. I gave you what you wanted. A Thanksgiving without me. Good luck explaining to everyone how you've been supporting the family now that the power's out. The expression that crossed her face wasn't just panic, it was fear. She knew. The illusion was breaking. I turned the corner and didn't look back. I parked at a nearby overlook, a quiet place I used to visit during college. The air was cold, but for the first time in years, I felt still. I sat for a long time, just watching the frozen lake. No beeping phones. No family obligations. No expectations pressing in on me. When I finally turned my phone back on, I had dozens of missed calls and text messages. My father had left a voicemail. Everett, you need to stop this nonsense. Turn the utilities back on, and we'll talk about whatever your concerns are. Concerns? I texted back 2 words. Ask Lillian. Then I shut my phone off again and drove home. Later that evening, the expected confrontation arrived. Loud knocking on my apartment door around 8 p.m. My parents stood there with Lillian, Dad looking irritated, Mom distressed, and Lillian flipping between tears and angry defiance. When I opened the door, I didn't step aside. Fix it, Lillian said immediately. You're ruining everything. I crossed my arms. Fix what exactly? I thought you were paying the bills. Don't do this, she snapped. This is about you being petty. You've been telling everyone you're the one supporting them. So tell the truth or I will. You're just jealous, she spat. That Mom and Dad have always appreciated me more. They don't appreciate you, I replied. They appreciate the story you told them. And that story ends tonight. I pulled out my phone and showed my parents the transaction history. Payments every month. Utility statements in my name. Property taxes. Mortgage deposits. My mother looked at the screen in disbelief. But Lillian showed us receipts. I nodded. Screenshots of my payments. Every one of them came from me. Lillian's voice faltered. I was just trying to protect you. You hate being the center of attention. I was helping. You were helping yourself, I said. And making me look like I didn't care. My father opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. I'm done. No more payments. You'll have to set up your own accounts. You can believe Lillian's version of the story if you want, but you'll be believing it in the dark. I closed the door gently but firmly. As it latched shut, I felt something inside me shift, not with vengeance, but with finality. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was freeing. The days after Thanksgiving were quieter than I expected. I thought there would be non-stop calls, maybe even a family-wide intervention. But the silence lasted a full week before the next wave began. It started on social media. Lillian began posting vague updates, pictures of her with our parents, quotes about resilience, and captions that read things like, even the strongest are tested when others try to tear them down. It was subtle, but those who knew our family understood the message. I was being cast as the antagonist in a drama I never asked to be part of. Then came the group text. If Everett reaches out with any strange stories, just know he's going through something difficult. We're all trying to support him the best we can. I didn't respond. But I did screenshot it. My cousin Daniel messaged me privately. Hey, is everything okay? Lillian's been saying you're lashing out because of stress or burnout or something. I sent him a screenshot of my mortgage payment to our parents' lender from the previous month, followed by another one from 3 months before. No commentary. Just receipts. Wait, he replied. I thought Lillian was paying everything. She made a whole speech at Grandma's birthday about covering the property taxes. She didn't, I typed back. That payment was mine. It always has been. The questions started flowing in after that. One cousin turned into 3. Then my aunt called. Everett, I just want to understand. Your mom asked me last week if I could help cover their electric bill. But I thought everything was covered? I stopped paying, I told her. 2 years of handling their mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, silently. Lillian took credit for all of it. I was tired of being invisible. There was a long pause on the line. Then a soft, I see. She hung up. I didn't know who she'd tell. But I knew the story was starting to change shape. Meanwhile, back in Lenwood, my parents were dealing with the real-life fallout. With the utilities shut off, they had no choice but to re-establish accounts in their own names. Deposits were high due to past due marks on their credit. Without me covering the gaps, they were facing the harsh cost of their monthly living for the first time in years. Something miraculous happened. My father found a full-time job again, less money than before, but stable. My mother started taking on more hours doing bookkeeping work from home. They adjusted. They had to. Lillian, on the other hand, unraveled. She couldn't maintain the illusion anymore. People were asking questions she couldn't answer. Relatives wanted to see proof. A few, bless them, still believed her, thinking I was exaggerating or seeking attention. But the cracks in her story were obvious. One evening, I received a voicemail from Uncle Raymond. His tone had changed completely. Your father told me what happened. I owe you an apology. That toast I gave at Thanksgiving. I didn't know. Neither did I wanted to say. Not fully. Not until that door closed in my face. A few days later, around 1:30 in the morning, someone pounded on my door. It was Lillian. Her eyes were glassy, and she looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. Her shoulders slumped forward, and she clutched her coat around her like armor. You ruined everything, she said flatly. You did that yourself, I answered. I just stopped covering for it. They won't even look at me, she said. Dad's barely said 10 words to me. Mom just cries. They believed the story you gave them for years, I replied. This is what happens when truth shows up late. She stepped forward, but I blocked the doorway. You don't get to come in here and pretend this is about one moment, I told her. You created an image of yourself that depended on making me look like I didn't care. That I was cold. Uninvolved. And you did it with my help, using my money. I was there, she cried suddenly. You weren't. You dropped off checks and thought that made you better. I listened to them cry. I sat through every dinner, every awkward silence. I handled everything they felt. I was present. You were, I said calmly. And that mattered. But it didn't give you the right to lie. Not for 2 years. Not to our parents. Not to the rest of the family. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, I saw the girl I grew up with, not the carefully curated image she had become. When did you stop caring about me? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I never stopped, I replied. But I finally started caring about myself too. She looked away. I called a car to take her home. She didn't fight it. Before leaving, she turned and said, they'll never forgive me. That's not up to me, I told her. That's theirs to figure out. When the door closed behind her, I leaned against it and exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. There was grief in the quiet. Not for what I lost, but for what I'd held on to far too long. A month passed before my father called again. We had no idea how much you were doing, he said, his voice soft. Lillian gave us receipts, stories. She made it sound like she was managing everything. She asked me for the confirmations, I replied. Said she needed them to keep track of everything. Then she used them. We should have questioned it. We should have asked, he said. He didn't apologize.
But for a man like my father, acknowledging the mistake was monumental. She's not living here anymore, he added.
Moved in with a friend after everything came out. And you and Mom? I asked. I didn't know why.
Maybe I still cared, even after it all.
We're managing, he said. It's not easy, but we're figuring it out. That's good, I said. And I meant it.
Before we ended the call, he hesitated. Your mom found something, he added.
In Lillian's room. Old bank statements. Credit card applications. Some with your name. My chest tightened. What kind of statements? Ones we didn't recognize.
Looked like she had access to your information, passwords maybe.
You might want to check. When I hung up, I immediately called my bank. Changed my passwords. Checked my accounts.
And that's when I saw them, attempted logins from unfamiliar devices, all tied to an IP address near Lillian's old apartment.
There were even credit inquiries I hadn't authorized.
She hadn't just taken credit for my help. She had started trying to take my identity.
That night, I filed a fraud report. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because there comes a point when silence becomes complicity.
Once the fraud investigation began, everything moved faster than I expected. The detective assigned to my case was thorough. We met at a small coffee shop near my apartment, where she laid out the details in a thick folder. She didn't just try to open one card, the detective said, flipping through documents.
There were 3 applications using your name.
She was denied for 2, but one went through with a $5,000 limit.
It was maxed out in under a week. My stomach dropped. I had no idea.
That's not all, she continued.
We also traced activity tied to your grandmother's social security number.
There are questionable transfers connected to a charity fund associated with your sister's yoga studio. And someone used your cousin Meredith's name to apply for a loan 6 months ago.
I didn't know what to say.
It was no longer just about family betrayal, it was about criminal intent, one that crossed multiple lines. The district attorney is interested in pursuing charges, the detective told me.
They'd like your cooperation. I nodded. I'll do whatever's necessary. That night, I sat at home in the quiet of my apartment.
The evidence sat in my email inbox, pages and pages of confirmed activity, IP logs, forged applications.
It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. It was a pattern. The decision to press charges wasn't easy. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want justice in a dramatic sense. I just wanted truth. And I wanted it to matter. 3 months later, Lillian was formally charged with multiple counts of identity theft, wire fraud, and unauthorized use of financial documents.
She rejected the plea deal, still convinced she could explain it all away, as she had done so many times before. But the truth had receipts. And this time, no one was covering for her. The court date came in the spring.
I sat near the front of the courtroom with my attorney. My parents sat in the back, subdued. My mother looked down most of the time. My father watched everything, his expression unreadable. Lillian entered in a modest gray suit, trying to look composed.
But when she saw me, her face faltered.
She didn't speak. She didn't need to.
The judge denied her request for probation and sentenced her to 18 months in county correctional.
She would likely serve 8. Her attorney asked for leniency, citing emotional stress and complicated family dynamics. But the judge, after reviewing the documentation, shook his head. Responsibility matters, he said. Intent matters.
Repeated deception over a sustained period matters. I'll never forget the look on Lillian's face when those words landed. For the first time in her life, her charm didn't work.
Her tears didn't sway. Her narrative collapsed under the weight of actual evidence. After the hearing, my parents met me outside. We stood in silence for a while. No one knew what to say. Eventually, my mother whispered, "We didn't know." I nodded. I believe you. That didn't make it okay. But it was true.
They hadn't known because they hadn't looked.
We were so proud of her, my father said, barely audible. We wanted to believe. I get it, I said.
But you still had another child. They looked down, and for once, I didn't rush to fill the silence.
Will you ever forgive us? My mother asked. I don't know, I answered honestly. I'm still figuring that out. That night, I went home alone. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel powerful. What I felt was stillness, like I could finally take off a coat I didn't realize I'd been wearing for years. The following month, I bought a new couch for my apartment. I started guitar lessons like I'd always wanted. I saved the rest of the money I once poured into mortgage payments and grocery transfers and insurance renewals. I also blocked my parents' numbers. Not in anger. Just in necessity. Some things are too fractured to mend with quiet dinners and awkward holidays. Sometimes, boundaries are the only healing that sticks. Extended relatives took sides, as they always do. Some defended Lillian. Some called me privately to apologize. A few stayed neutral, unwilling to give up the story they liked better. Lillian, from what I heard through legal updates, was keeping to herself in county. She'd lost her teaching license and shut down her social media. A few of her friends continued to post about her with hashtags like #misunderstood and #complicatedtruths. They never reached out to me. I didn't expect them to. Then, one day, I received a letter. Handwritten, postmarked from the correctional facility. Her name and the return address. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I shredded it and went on with my evening. It wasn't a rejection. It was a choice. I no longer had room in my life for manipulations disguised as apologies. It's been almost a year now. I haven't spoken to my family since that courtroom day. No Thanksgiving. No Christmas. No birthdays. It sounds cold, I know. But there's a strange peace that comes with no longer pretending. No longer waiting to be chosen, acknowledged, or believed. I still get texts from unknown numbers sometimes, likely from my mother, or relatives trying to reopen a conversation. I delete them all. I'm not angry anymore. But I am done. You can love people deeply and still decide they don't belong in your life. That's not bitterness. That's clarity. They had 29 years to see me. Now, I finally see myself. Thank you for watching the video. Like it if you watched the video to the end and don't forget to subscribe. Have a nice day.